Greetings, fellow humans. You know me as Iceman Caesar, and this is what's up in the world today. Got a bittersweet topic on the schedule for today. Bitter because unfortunately this person just passed away a few weeks ago, and it's a very tough loss for not only for the world but for wrestling, but for the whole wrestling business. But sweet because I get a chance to talk about one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, one of the greatest tag team wrestlers of all time, one of the greatest big men. The big nasty rhino, the one, the only Jim the Anvil Neidhart. And as I said, unfortunately, we lost the Anvil a few weeks ago, but his legacy will stand strong and tall for as long as people are talking about wrestling. So, but this was a very sad and a very shocking death to me to come by. Just obviously all of them are very sad and most of them are shocking, but the Anvil, I don't know, I just kind of expected that him and Brett would be the guys to the Hart Foundation stable to have a little bit of longevity in life. And the Anvil definitely had his struggles with addictions and things, but he had worked really hard to become clean in the last few years. So I kind of was just taking for granted and assuming we'd have him around for a long time. So this one hit me. I was pretty shocked when the news came down, and it was just, and it hit me pretty good because being a Canadian wrestlers, and just fellow Canadians, I guess kind of seemed to have more of a connection. Even though the Anvil wasn't Canadian, he was connected to Canadians through the Hart family, and the Hart family they feel like family to me, and it's I'm sure, and to most Canadians as well. So God, the Anvil is definitely one of those guys that felt like family, and just felt like all the '80s wrestlers. I said it when I was talking. Unfortunately, it's been a tough year. 2018 just lost Nikolai Volkov, and I was talking about in the video, talking about him. It was like those '80s wrestlers just seemed like they all seemed like uncles to me, and it's like, so to lose the Anvil hit me pretty good. It's and he was pretty through Natalia, we got to see a lot of him on Total Divas and her social media. So it's almost it's almost like he's just I don't know, it's it's definitely a tough loss. And my strongest love, heart, and prayers go out to Natalia and the rest of her family, and Jim's, the Anvil's fans and friends and fans. But it's just definitely a tough loss. And he was one of my, I always loved watching the Anvil wrestle. Like, obviously he's not a technical wizard like Brett, or he's just a different kind of wrestler. I love watching these guys throw around the big, he just had that brute strength. Then he was just so good at utilizing it. He didn't waste any of his energy. He was always doing something that meant something. He's always bumping the opposition around. So it was always fun to watch the Anvil get in there and work his craft. And make no mistake about it, it's the Anvil was one of the best tag team wrestlers that have wrestled, that have put on a pair of boots, because it's he doesn't get. I don't think when people think of great tag team wrestlers, I don't think the Anvil jumps right to the top of the list. But he knew what his role is. He was the big brute to come in there, make the hot tag, or if they were a heel, really go to work on the baby faces. And the Anvil knew his role. He played it, did it. He performed it to absolute perfection, and he was believable. I mean, every time, nobody. I don't think any fan wanted to get in the way of an angry Anvil, and there wasn't a lot of wrestlers that would want to get in the way of an angry Anvil. So he was just one of my favorite wrestlers to watch. And obviously his connection to Brett with the Hart Foundation, and then just being his connection to the Hart family, he was just one of my favorite guys to watch in the ring, and one of my favorite characters to watch perform. And Jim Neidhart is definitely a guy that you want fighting with you rather than against you. And I was glad that he was connected to the side that I felt connected to, because I certainly would not want to be looking on a battlefield looking across from Jim the Anvil Neidhart. But it always felt like the Anvil was kind of on the side that I was on. It's like, to me, I always looked at the Anvil as one of like the weapons for the good guys. It's like, the bad guys would, they'd be standing tall and they'd be like, yeah, watch this, and they'd bring in their big bad, whatever, and most of the time he'd be the guy to get the one up, but we had an ace up our sleeve. We had an Anvil up our sleeve, and that to me was like how I always looked at Jim the Anvil Neidhart. He was like, when the good guys needed a guy to be like, oh yeah, well we got our own to come up. It's like, to me that was the Anvil, and it's that's why he was just always a favorite. And I was always glad that I felt that he was on my side and not against me. But it was just, he's one of those guys that he just felt like a weapon for the good guys. He felt like a way that the good guys could even the score when they brought out the biggest, baddest bad guys. So it's I just felt I definitely was a big fan of Jim Neidhart, and not just because he was in a tag team with Brett, but because of who he was as a wrestler and a performer. And it was just he was just so great at being the Anvil. I mean, it's I don't think it was that far from reality. So I mean, that's easy. I'm sure it wasn't a big stretch, but man, at the same time, it's like he was able to project that realness onto the screen, into the audience, and it really connected with me. I always thought that the Anvil was a real legit badass tough guy, but he was our legit badass tough guy. He's the good guy, so he was the guy we throw out there against the biggest, baddest bad guys. But the Anvil's biggest, I think, his biggest legacy in wrestling will be as a tag team wrestler. Like, Jim the Anvil Neidhart is one of the greatest tag team wrestlers of all time, no doubt about it. And to me, he was just a master of the hot tag, because he got in there and he didn't just do your regular moves, or he didn't just do the same paid by numbers. He'd get in there, he'd give a guy a big shoulder block, or he'd give a guy a big body slam, or or he'd throw the guy into the corner, or he would always, and he was so athletic, he was able to bump around and move, and it's just like, he's almost as fast as Brett, but it's like, he's big and strong, so it's like, he's just rocking these guys across the ring. So it was, to me, Brett was like, nobody's better than Brett at taking a beating and making you want to you're watching the Hart Foundation matches, and it's like, man, if Brett doesn't make a tag, they are done. And when he'd finally do it, and the Anvil would come in there, and he was just a master at keeping the crowd, you get that big initial pop when the tag happens, but it takes, it's not easy to keep that roar sustained and then to keep it going higher. But that's why I feel like why I say the Anvil was a master of the hot tag, because he was able to get in there and do the right things to keep the crowd, keep that level keep the crowd noise at the level it was, and then keep it going, because it was. And man, the Anvil, he'd get in there and he'd slingshot Brett, or he'd even sometimes slingshot himself. So it was just, he didn't just do the normal paint by the number stuff. He got in there, he had, there was a rhyme or a reason to it. Even if he wasn't consciously thinking about it, it's like he was just so naturally gifted at tag team wrestling that he just knew what to do, and he knew what offense to put out there against his opponents. So it was, to me, his biggest legacy in the business and life will be as a tag team wrestler. He never really had a good singles run in any company that he was in, but that's, to me, that wasn't because of he wasn't because of talent. He didn't have a singles run because he didn't have it in him. To me, it was there's really no good reason why we never saw the Anvil built into a big nasty heel to go up against the big babyface champion. Because that to me was just that was his natural progression. He gets after the Hart Foundation is done, the Anvil is good enough in the ring, and he's good enough on the mic, and he's got the charisma to be able to carry a feud with the big babyface champion. But I don't think his cap, there was a cap on him as just a challenger. I believe that Jim the Anvil Neidhart would have been an amazing heel champion. He's believable. He's good to watch in the ring. You pay money to watch the Anvil, you get your money's worth. He's great on the mic. He can sell a feud. To me, it's it's a real shame that we never got to see a real solid singles run from the Anvil, especially as a big nasty heel. That's just, to me, that is just a no-brainer, and It's I'm sure there. I mean, sure, a lot of people have different opinions about why it didn't happen, but to me, it was just like he just never really didn't really have the ambition for it. I mean, it seemed like he got so much success and greatness with the tag team stuff. Maybe he just didn't really. It never really. I mean, he just never really had any desire to put in the work and effort and energy to go out there on your own and to have a big singles run as a heel or a baby face. I think he could have done both, but to me it just seemed like he was, as long as he was getting, as long as he was making his money and had enough to take care of his family and party, he was. I mean, that was it. He was content. So I mean, it's a shame because it's, if he had been, if he had more of a just more of an interest in establishing, maybe establishing a singles run, I think we would have got some great matches with guys like Brett and Shawn Michaels, and just I mean, even Big Diesel. I think the Anvil's a guy that you can put in there with pretty much anybody and have a good match as long as he's motivated and and ready to go. But excuse me. But I just never. To me, I always, when I look at the Anvil, I always see he's he's so great as a tag team wrestler that you don't really worry about, did he have a singles run or why not. But to me, when I look at him, it's like I still look at it, it's like, man, I wish that we could have got that great heel, like that big heel singles run from the Anvil, because I think he would have crushed in it. But it just seemed like he just never really. I mean, when you're in one of the great, arguably one of the greatest tag team, when you're in arguably the greatest tag team of all time, and you've had so much greatness and success, I mean that it would be enough for a lot of people, and I guess it was enough for the Anvil. But it's definitely a shame that we never at least got a Bret Hitman Hart versus Jim the Anvil Neidhart match. They did wrestle. They did have a singles match. It wasn't quite Bret Hitman Hart versus Jim the Anvil Neidhart, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. It's I don't think there was I think there was a chance, like the big chance you had to do Bret versus the Anvil was obviously when he came back to help Owen during that feud, but I see why they didn't, because you don't want to take the focus off of Owen. Like that goal was to build Owen up to be a main eventer, to be a great heel, and if the Anvil would have got in there and started working singles program with Bret, you would have kind of split the audience. Some people would have wanted to see the Anvil get the program. Some people would have wanted to see Owen. So it's. I see why they didn't do it at that time, but it's a real shame that we never got a little feud with babyface Bret versus the heel Anvil, and as a singles run. And but so like that, and so now I kind of want to just go back and kind of go over. Just kind of go over the life and times of Jim the Anvil Neidhart, where he started in the business, and kind of just walk through his life and career from there. So I guess we'll start back at the beginning. Whether if he did lack ambition for a singles run, and in his later in his wrestling career, he certainly did not lack any ambition early in life. As in high school, he set shot put records that stood for more than 12 years, so you can see how high he set the bar at the time. And it's but I mean, no lack of ambition there. I mean, he was setting records, and he even made NFL rosters in Oakland and Dallas, and got into games competing in preseason action. So I mean, clearly no lack of ambition early in life, setting records in high school that stood for double-digit years, and then is able to crack 2 NFL rosters and play in preseason games. So I mean, he was able to get himself to the highest level in pretty much everything he was trying to do. I mean, shot put and stuff in high school, and and then trying to get to playing football, trying to get to the NFL. So it's he was able to accomplish a lot there. But after he was released in Dallas, instead of trying to keep going around the horn and doing the football thing, he decided to try and become a pro wrestler, and that led Jim to that led Jim to Calgary to train in the Hart Dungeon with the legendary Stu Hart. And thank God that he made that decision to transition, because all the great memories and all the great things that have happened off of that, never would have happened if he hadn't decided to go to pro wrestling. And thankfully, he chose Calgary as his starting point to figure it out, and that would connect him to the Hart family forever, and that the rest is history there. But the Anvil made his way to Calgary, but he was not the Anvil yet at that time, just Jim Neidhart. So Jim made his way to Stampede Wrestling, and he worked for Stampede. That was Stu Hart's promotion. He worked there from 1978 to 1985. And he was a multiple-time tag team champion for Stampede Wrestling, and he also worked in Mid-South and Championship Wrestling in Florida, winning tag team championships in both of those places. So, right off the bat in his career, he was getting into tag team wrestling and becoming good enough to be a champion. So, it didn't take him long to settle into the aspect of wrestling that he was going to thrive and shine in. And it's it's when you think of tag teams and Jim Neidhart, obviously you think Hart Foundation, but even before that, he was establishing himself as a great tag team wrestler, winning tag team championships in multiple promotions. So he was building himself quite a career early on. But it was while working for Stu in Stampede Wrestling, when Stu wanted a little bit of publicity for his new wrestler that he had. He knew he had this big, strong, athletic, tough guy. But it's you got to get the name out. You got to get the name out there. You got to get some publicity. You have to get him a name. But that was the idea Stu had. He offered Jim $500 if Jim could go into the Stampede that year and enter and win the Anvil throwing contest. And I don't think it's too hard to figure out what the outcome of that was, because obviously the Anvil entered and won, earning himself the nickname the Anvil. So it's Stu Hart was obviously Jim owes so much of the good in his life to Stu and the Harts, because Stu gave him the chance to be a wrestler, to obviously allowed him to marry his daughter, and was responsible for him getting the nickname the Anvil. So it's really cool to hear stories like that, and to see how all these things came together. And but he tossed that thing over 11 feet. That was 11 feet tossing an anvil. So that's he certainly earned his nickname. And in the early 80s, Stampede had a working relationship with New Japan Pro Wrestling, so the Anvil got some experience wrestling in Japan as well as North America. And it was in so he won tag team championships in Stampede Wrestling, and it was, as I said, he also won championships in Mid-South Wrestling with Butch Reed, who was over in Florida. But Butch Reed is a big name, so the fact that Jim, even before the Hart Foundation, was a tag team champion with Butch Reed in Mid-South was a pretty big deal, and showing even without the Hart Foundation, it probably Jim probably would have carved himself out a legendary career. But thankfully he did connect with Brett and get into that. But we're coming to there right away. He would also win. He'd also win different singles and tag team versions of the NWA titles. I believe his NWA would win the NWA United States Tag Team Championships, and the Southern Championship, I believe. So, but he didn't have too big a run as a singles, and not too much success in those runs. But he did win some championships. is gone, it is down as an NWA champion, so that's definitely significant. Back in the '80s, when the NWA was still, still a force to be reckoned with, they're starting to come back now with Dave Lagana and Billy Corgan. Billy Corgan bought it, and they've done a great job of just slowly but surely trying to build the brand back up, build the name back up with their champions. Magnus did a great job as champion. He lost the title to Cody Rhodes at All In. So it's Cody Rhodes obviously has the legacy and the talent and the name and everything to carry the title. So it's great to see what they're doing with it. I'm really excited. Hopefully things keep going upward, keep on moving upwards for them, and it's because it's better for wrestling to have as much competition as possible. And NWA is a name with history and legacy that means something. So I'm definitely cheering for those guys to keep the positive momentum going. But that brings so if that brings us to 1985 when Stampede shut its doors, and because Vince McMahon was trying to buy up all the territories and just buy up as much TV time and as much of the best talent as he could and put it under one roof. And Stu Hart came to an agreement with Vince to sell the promotion with the TV time and everything to Vince. But one of the points of the deal that Stu made sure was in there was that Vince take Bret, Jim, Dynamite, and Davey Boy, bring them all in as wrestlers to work in the WWF. So that was when and how. Excuse me. That was when and how Jim got his big break. Excuse me. That was when and how Jim got his big break into the WWF. And it was and so also that was part of the deal. All four guys get brought in, but it didn't. But Bret and Jim were not a tag team to start off with at first. They actually started with doing singles matches together. But this was not Bret the Hitman Hart versus Jim the Anvil Neidhart. This was Cowboy Bret Hart versus Jim Neidhart. So, and it's as awful and ridiculous as Cowboy Bret Hart sounds and would have been. Thankfully it happened, because without that, Bret might not have been frustrated enough to go to the office and say, look, this is stupid. I'm not Cowboy Bret Hart. It's like, just, there's this, we got this guy Jim Neidhart. Why don't you let us be a tag team, and we'll go out there and tear the house down. And thankfully, they listened to Bret and gave him a chance, because obviously that was the start of in the conversation for the greatest tag team of all time. And it's just thank God that Bret and Jim got together and formed the tag team, because they turned tag team wrestling on its head. There's lots of great tag teams, but it's like Bret and Jim with the power and the strength was just like, that's the template you want for tag teams. And it really can't be overstated with how much Jim the Anvil Neidhart did for Bret Hart in his early career. Like, without the stuff that Jim did for Bret early on, I don't think Bret ever becomes even close to the wrestler he was, the performer he was, or just because like Bret himself will tell you in his book, or even in his interviews and stuff, Bret will say, like, he was not good at interviews at the time. He was shy. He was nervous. He was finding himself. He was still finding the character, the Hitman Bret Hart. He was finding himself comfortable in front of TV cameras. And, he really, really relied on Jim, on the Anvil, to carry those early interviews, and so that Bret could kind of, figure himself out and, get better and grow until finally he was able to, jump into the promos, and he was fine. He didn't need to be hidden anymore. He didn't, it was just, they could go back and forth, and they were both contributing at the same level. But without Jim carrying those promos and those early days, it's like Bret I don't think Brett gets the confidence or the skill required to be the best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be. So I mean, Brett definitely gives Jim all the credit in the world for everything he did for him in those early days, but it can't be overstated. Like, I mean, without Jim the Anvil Neidhart, we don't get Bret Hart the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. So. It's and it was not only allowing Brett to work through his shyness and get comfortable with his character and on the mic. Not just doing that, it was allowed him to do that in a pretty good position, because Brett and Jim together, they're having great matches, and they were people were paying money to see them, so they were getting higher on the card, and so I mean it was easy. And I mean, it's tougher to build confidence and to build yourself up if you're doing jobs every night, if you're not working with the best talent, but because of how good they were as a tag team, and how just how Jim was able to carry the load in those early interviews and keep them, they were able to stay relevant, stay at a high position, and keep performing at a high level. So it's just, I mean, it was just. Yeah, it's easy to see why that was God's plan for everything, because it's like, I mean, Brett needed Jim as bad as Jim needed Brett, so it was just a perfect combination of a tag team. And like, to me, the matches that the Hart Foundation put on with all the '80s, with all those tag teams in the '80s. I mean, look at the list. I mean, it's not like the Hart Foundation were carried anybody by any stretch of the imagination. Like, not trying to say that at all. It's just like the Hart Foundation were one of the best, but they had like all of this top level, top quality talent to work with. I mean, the British Bulldogs, the Rougeau brothers, Demolition, the Brainbusters, Killer Bees, the Young Stallions, Strike Force. Like, I mean, the Conquistadors, even those. I mean, I'm sure I'm forgetting some great tag teams, but it's like, just you can the level of wrestling that you saw from '80s tag team wrestling is just unmatched. It's unparalleled. I mean, the closest level maybe was this recent run of the New Day, the Usos, the Bar, Bludgeon Brothers, even Harper and Rowan, Breezango. I mean, like, they were having some, I mean, even throwing the Ascension in there when they're given a chance to actually work. I mean, they're a great tag team. They saw it in NXT, but I mean, that's probably as close as it gets, kind of in these. But because I mean, you had the run of the Attitude Era with the Hardys and Dudleys and Edge and Christian, but those matches were, I mean, ladder matches, TLC, a little bit different than one-on-one, like, not ladder matches. So I mean, but I'm not trying to, obviously, definitely not trying to take anything away from that, like the Attitude Era guys. It's just, to me, it's just different. It's just different working styles and different things. I mean, Attitude Era that was what you had to do. I mean, people were not looking for this '80s style tag team wrestling anymore. So I mean, without the Attitude Era guys, we don't get the New Day. I mean, it's but I just really don't want anybody to think that I'm like slighting the Attitude Era guys and saying, oh, their matches can't be. I mean, they are. It's just it's just different. I mean, the Hardys and Edge and Christian and the Dudleys are. I mean. They're on a different level than everyone because of the stuff they did and had to do. So I just want to throw it out there. But I mean, really, like, you put on a match with any of these two tag teams, and you are going to be entertained. You're going to get a great match. And it's just like, I just love '80s tag team wrestling so much. Like, give me a playlist of every match and just mixed up of tag teams, and I could sit there and watch it through, because it's just it's so good, the action. I mean, it's stiff, but they're not hurting. But they're not really hurting each other. I mean, it's physical. It's fast paced. It's hard hitting. It's there's submissions. There's power moves. It's just, you got everything in these matches, and it's so. To me, it's like the Hart Foundation versus the British Bulldogs. You could put that on all day, every day, and I would never complain, and I would never be bored, and I would enjoy every single second of it. And it's just like, those two teams had so much chemistry. They were so good together. I mean, it's just at any time, any place, any card, they can put on the best match in the show. So I mean, I will cherish the Hart Foundation versus British Bulldog matches, until the day I die, for sure. it's hard to really pick one great match that stands out as the best Hart Foundation match. I mean, they had, to me, their level of quality was so good that it's really almost impossible to just pull one out. But, if I really had to pick one, I mean, the SummerSlam 1990 match versus Demolition was probably definitely up there, but maybe that was one of their best because it just had everything. It had the story, it had the drama, had the title change, it had the great action, it had the crowd insane. I mean, it had Legion of Doom in there. It had all the elements of a great match. It was a big stage. It's SummerSlam. It was the second biggest card of the year. It was a big main event. Big main events to deal with, to compete with. So I just think all the elements were there for a great match, and it's always been one of my favorite tag team matches ever. And to watch it today, it still holds up. So it's tough to pull one out there. But if twisted my arm, if I had to throw one match out there, I'd probably say that Demolition match at SummerSlam 1990. 'Cause it was just so good, and all the elements were there. But and then the Hart Foundation would lose their final tag team titles to the Nasty Boys at WrestleMania 7. I also think that's a great match, but it's tough for me to watch because it made me so mad as a kid. I actually got to watch WrestleMania 7 live. Like, we actually went to a closed circuit place to watch it, and so I mean I was so mad that the Hart Foundation lost, and it was one of those frustrations that gives you angst. It's like, oh man, to me it's just like if Jimmy Hart would have just got off of Bret's leg, he would have got there. And man, it was just a perfectly crafted match to get people invested in the finish, and it was to me it's like a sad that the Hart Foundation had to end, but it's a great end to it because it was a great match. It told a great story, and I mean that's what you want. You want the fans of the Hart Foundation to be heartbroken when they lose, and to realize that looking back that was the last one. So, but it was a great final curtain for the Hart Foundation. And it was that capped off an absolutely unbelievable run of a tag team. They are in the conversation for greatest tag team of all time. They might very well be the greatest tag team of all time. But I will always love watching their matches, and it's a legacy that will keep Jim the Anvil Neidhart in the forefront of wrestling memories because it's just the matches and memories they created are just. I mean, they just go so far, and they connect so strongly with people. It's him and his accomplishments will never ever be forgotten. That's for sure. And but it wasn't too long after the end of the Hart Foundation to where Jim moved into another tag team and formed the New Foundation with Bret's brother Owen. And they did not have a very long one. It was long run. It was pretty short, but they had an awesome match at Royal Rumble 1992 versus the Orient Express, and it was good. It was definitely good for Owen to get it. To have, even though it was a short run, just to have that. That little bit of a run and get that first great match under his belt, because that was Owen Hart's first great match. Was that 1992 Royal Rumble match. So I mean it's that's that. I mean everybody knew Owen had great talent, but to go in there, deliver, and say here's my match that I had that that can stand on its own as a great match to say something about me as a performer, as a wrestler. So the Anvil, not only did he help Bret, but he was a big influence on Owen as well. So I mean that New Foundation, not a very memorable run, but that to me it wasn't just a throwaway. It's definitely moved its up a few notches with that 1992 Royal Rumble match. Unfortunately, shortly after that match, he left, fired, whatever. I mean, not getting into the negative stuff. And so he went on to have a few short runs with WCW, and went back to New Japan Pro Wrestling for a bit, and even early ECW with a match versus the Sandman at November to Remember. I think 1993 or something. I thought that was crazy when I saw that little tidbit. It's like, wow, Jim Neidhart versus the Sandman. There's a match I don't think anybody. I mean, if you put that on a trivia, which of these matches hasn't happened, I guarantee you'd knock off a lot of people with Jim Neidhart versus the Sandman. I was pretty blown away by that, but that's such a cool little tidbit to me, like that, to have on a career like Jim Neidhart had. But it's didn't stay away from the WWF too long, just a couple years, and returned to the WWF at King of the Ring '94 to help Owen Hart win King of the Ring as not as a heel. And man, I felt betrayed as a fan. I was like, man, you're Hart Foundation, you're Bret's boy, and you turn your back on him and go with Owen. No, I was not happy with the Anvil around that time. But that was so huge for Owen. I mean, helped Owen and his heel run have instant credibility and believability, and really legitimized Owen as a performer and as a heel, because Anvil had credibility, and for him to be working with Owen meant that Owen had something special. So it was I definitely enjoyed watching those two. Watching those two together. I mean, Owen's heel run was one of the greatest things to watch play out in the history of wrestling, and to have the Anvil there by his side just made it that much better. And but unfortunately, personal demons caught up again with the Anvil, and right as they were scheduled to win the tag team titles, unfortunately, personal demons caught up, and he was released again. And this time stayed away for a little bit longer, but thankfully, it seems like, listening to the Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard and Conrad, some of the stories told about that Bruce would tell about Stu calling Vince to get some of the reasons why we realized why the Anvil kept getting these opportunities is because Stu would call up and, hey, Vince, the big nasty rhino is looking pretty good. I think he could be a pretty good for your show there. Sorry, I gotta try and do a Stu Hart. Everyone does one, so I gotta try. Even though unfortunately I never met him, would have loved to, but gotta try. But I just always thought that was that was kind of like he seemed like Stu and Jim had a really sweet relationship, almost like a father-son. He brought him in as one of his sons. Really tried to take care of him and help him, and just knew they tried to keep Jim from himself sometimes. Like let Vince know, like he can contribute. You just gotta bring the best out of him. So it's. But it's I always thought that was kind of a sweet part of their the relationship between Stu and Jim, and it's great that Vince would always give respect to Stu like that, and give Jim a chance after chance, and wouldn't turn Stu down, or maybe even stop maybe answering the calls. It's like, it's nice. It's always say what you will about Vince. I've certainly have my frustrations and will get angry with him, but he shows respect and does good things at the right time sometimes. So you got to give him his credit. And for how he did show respect to Stu, at different times, and and allowing Jim to have giving Jim Neidhart more opportunities in that. It's like it's just it's a thing that I really always appreciated about Vince, that he did for people like Stu and Jim Neidhart. But and another and that would lead, speaking of, leading to another opportunity to come back. Eventually, Jim would come back as a part of the Hart Foundation stable in 1997. And oh man, I remember that Raw when he came out and knocked Steve Austin off of the stage. I was so pumped, because this whole Hart Foundation stable coming together with Bret, Owen, Davey Boy, and Pillman. It's like there was just one piece missing. There's just that one thing, and then the Anvil shows up, and it's like boom, we we got it now. And it's just like when when the Anvil showed up, it's just kicked the excitement up, and it just made you think this story, this puzzle is complete right now. It's like now we're ready to rock and roll, and that once the Anvil got on board, I'm like, okay, now I really know that this Hart Foundation stable is not going to be anything to be with, and nobody's going to be coming in and trying to job these guys out. So I was really, really pumped to see the Anvil back as part of the Hart Foundation stable. And he got to be part of that great moment, Canadian Stampede, the 5-on-5 match, and it's just that the moment of where the Hall 5 guys have made their entrance, and Brett started, and they right before they all kind of turn and they're looking out at the crowd, you can kind of stop you can just kind of stop time there, and because it's like that was a great. Just it was a great time, for everyone. Everyone's alive, and everyone's like, you can just stop time there for and it's like that was just that moment, that pay-per-view, that the entrances, watching all 5 guys enter their music, that means so much to me. I'd watch it every day if I would let myself. It's just that Canadian Stampede is definitely up there as one of the greatest moments in Jim Neidhart's career. One of my favorite moments as a fan was that pay-per-view, and that whole them entering, and then the whole everything around the match. It was just incredible. And but unfortunately, after the Montreal screw job and everything happened around that, Jim Neidhart was loyal to Brett and said you can stick it, and left the WWF and went to WCW. But that's one of the reasons why. I mean, there's so many reasons why it was awful. The screw job had to go down, but Jim Neidhart WCW was not a good place for him to be at all. He needed to be in WWF with his family and everybody under the watch of Vince, who has actually had had running a tight ship to make sure guys weren't letting the worst versions of themselves come out like with their addictions and things like that. So he needed to be in WWF. That's one of the reasons why the screw job is such an awful thing to go down, because that made Jim leave, and obviously things didn't go well for him in WCW or Davey Boy. So it was just. But that leaving WWF for WCW would basically wind down his in-ring career as a wrestler. He'd actually returned to Raw again, I believe in 2007 for the 15-year Raw Battle Royal, and he came down to I think his final 5 or something like that. So it was he mended the bridges once again and came back, and he even made an appearance in TNA. What? I think he even won the match that he appeared in. That's another thing. He had a match versus the Sandman. He had a match in TNA. It's like, what? I don't remember that, and it took me by surprise when I saw that. But that's just that Jim Neidhart carved himself out a memorable, legendary career. That's for sure, and made sure he kind of dropped in every significant place that there is to go. And but that definitely would be it for the end of that would be it for the Anvil's in-ring career. But we would thankfully still get to be entertained by him over the years on the Total Divas reality show, thanks to Natalia being on the show, and it was it was so great to see him playing along with the activities and the things that the reality show would do with Natty and her family and everything like that. And it was just, him dressing up in crazy, outfits for photo shoots. And, it was really cool to see him playing along and having some fun with his family and having fun with the show. And it was, I'm not a huge reality TV fan, but it was, I enjoyed when the Anvil would be on the Total Divas, and getting to see him having fun and playing along with that. And it was just it was just another extension of the Anvil character in the entertainment. I mean, he entertained us all throughout his wrestling career, and then being on Total Divas wasn't a suction for the for entertainment or anything like that. He was, right in there being entertaining, so it was just a really cool part of the Total Divas show to have the Anvil on there, and really, it's like you can honestly say that from the first time Jim Neidhart showed up on TV to the very last time he was on TV, he was entertaining. He delivered the fans money's worth, and he was a character that you really would never forget. Excuse me. Whether it's in wrestling, whether it's on Total Divas, you're not going to forget Jim the Anvil Neidhart. So that's kind of bringing me to the end. Kind of talking here. The legacy of Jim the Anvil Neidhart to me will be as one of the best tag team wrestlers of all time. That to me is no doubt, no question about it. He is one of the best tag team wrestlers ever. And I believe he's an unsung. I mean, I don't think people realize just how good he was at tag team wrestling, and but I don't think I believe he'll have a great, strong legacy. I do believe he'll go into the Hall of Fame as a member of the Hart Foundation. It's just, oh God, just kills me that it couldn't be while he was alive, that he didn't get that moment to be up there with Bret and to just be showered with love and affection and attention. And it just breaks my heart that. And I mean, I know he would have been in the next year or two. It's just, I mean, I think he had just came to the last Hall of Fame. I think he was, showed that I think he was putting himself out there as, showing that he could, he was staying sober. He was trying to put the best version of himself out there. And it's just such a shame that, he had to pass away before he could have that Hall of Fame moment. But I know he'll be going in there as a member of the Hart Foundation, as he should, because his effort and energy and the work that he put in definitely made him a Hall of Famer and deserves the Hart Foundation to be recognized in the Hall of Fame. As the first tag team, I don't believe there is a tag team in there yet, so that would be a pretty great honor for the Anvil to have it as part of the Hart Foundation. But his legacy is not just going to be his family as well. 3 beautiful daughters, and his beautiful wife Ellie. His family will always be his legacy, and Natalia, extending that legacy into wrestling as well. Carved out her own amazing, legendary Hall of Fame career on her own, and didn't. I mean, unfortunately, due to whatever issues, the Anvil wasn't always in the position to use his name to help Natty, so she really did carve things out on her own, and she has brought so much honor and greatness to not only the Neidhart name but the Hart family legacy as well, and she will be one of his greatest accomplishments and legacies, and it's just it's tough. It's I just really I had a lot of love for Jim Neidhart, and I really thought he'd be around, and it's tough to just to connect, to have, so much love for Natty, and TJ as well, like son-in-law, you always saw Jim wearing TJ's Tyson Kids, the Kid and Cesaro t-shirts, like he's always wearing, supporting them there. So, obviously he had a lot of love he had a great relationship and connection with TJ Tyson. So it's just really sad. But their legacy, their legacy will be part of his legacy, and it's in and out of the ring as a wrestler, as his family will be his legacy, and it's and he'll be he'll just be known as one of the best, most entertaining characters. Like that's Jim the Anvil Neidhart will be known as one of wrestling's greatest characters, and obviously the beard and the laugh will be part of that legacy for sure. Yeah, baby. Yeah. It's like I just always loved imitating the Anvil, always loved doing the laugh and everything, and and I at one point I did have my goatee grown into an Anvil. It was when literally the first when I first could start growing facial hair, my goal was to grow a goatee. That's what I wanted, and when I got the goatee, I'm like, I'm growing an Anvil, and I had a big Anvil goatee. Unfortunately, I don't have a picture of it, but. But I did my first goatee. I grew it into an Anvil. So it was, his legacy. His legacy as one of the greatest tag team wrestlers of all time. His beautiful family that he had. His Natalia with amazing legendary Hall of Fame career she had. And being one of the greatest, one of wrestling's greatest, most fun, entertaining characters. That we've ever had. So it's. I'm gonna remember the Anvil as like an uncle, as like I do all these '80s wrestlers, like as family, as someone I just gave me so much entertainment, and I got so much love for, and it's just this was a tough one. It hit me hit me pretty good. I was it's. What can you say? It's just wrestling is. The relationship that wrestling requires between the fan and wrestler and performer, it's just it creates such a different bond than other things that it's just hard to explain. But the Anvil will certainly loved, and he will certainly be very missed. And he will, but he'll never ever be forgotten. I mean, his accomplishments and legacy will always stand out through the thankfully with the WWE Network, there will just be all the countless number of amazing legendary matches he was a part of will keep the memory and legacy of Jim Neidhart where it needs to be. So. That kind of brings us to the end of talking about the Anvil. My strongest love and prayers go up for his family, friends, and fans. It's I know up in heaven, thanks to Jesus we're all getting there. But just in case, I know Stu's up there. Hey, God. The Anvil, he's a pretty good guy. He do good for you up here. He did some good work. So maybe you bring him in. So I know that even though thanks to Jesus we didn't need it, I know that Stu is up there, putting in a good word for the Anvil to make sure he gets up there. So it's so that's gonna do it. It's just it's sad that we had to say goodbye so soon, but we will certainly never forget you. We've got so much love for you, and we will we'll keep your memory going. Much love and Godspeed to you, brother. Much love to the Anvil. And so before I end the video today, I just wanted to mention a couple other people that have recently passed away connected to the wrestling industry. Aretha Franklin. I mean, some people would be surprised to know she's connected to the wrestling industry, but she sang the national anthem at WrestleMania 3. The biggest wrestling show ever, and maybe one of the most important. And it's just, to me, I always loved that the wrestling had history like that, because to me it legitimized it. It's like whenever people would look down on his lowbrow, it's like, well, it's good enough for Aretha Franklin to come out and just look absolutely elegant and beautiful, and just singing an incredible rendition of the national anthem. So it's just I just love that. I love that the wrestling has history like that. I love that WrestleMania had history like that to give it some prestige, more prestige, and to make it just give it that much more of a legendary feel. So Aretha Franklin was a legend, a legend and a queen of the music industry. I mean, the impact that she has. I could go on for another few hours for a video, but it's just. definitely a lot of her music connected with me, and she was a great influencer on the music industry. Gave us so many great musics, and so much great music. And it's sad that she had to leave us, but it's we were so lucky to have to have her, and so lucky to be alive at the same time as Aretha Franklin, to experience the incredible music and energy that she was able to put out there. So strongest love and prayers and good energy out to her family, friends, and fans. And we love you and we'll miss you, Aretha. Godspeed, Queen. You know, and last but certainly not least, my boy Burt Reynolds. We just lost Burt Reynolds, and I was always kind of holding out hope that some way, somehow, whether it was through like a Comic-Con or something like that, or even just, I don't know, some chance meeting or whatever. I just was always holding out hope that I'd get a chance to meet Burt Reynolds, because I just had so much love for Burt Reynolds. He seemed like the coolest uncle in the world. I mean, he just had that energy that no matter what character he was in any movie, you just seemed like you knew him. Like, he just seemed like he knew you, and I mean, it just seemed like, I don't know, Burt Reynolds had such a great energy, and I just loved watching him work in movies. I just, a few weeks ago, a couple weeks before he passed, I just bought his autobiography that he had written, and I didn't have a chance to dig into it yet. But it's just kind of weird that things like that happen right before. But Cop and a Half is one of my favorite movies that as a kid. Recently watched it. It still holds up today, and it was just such an incredible performance. And it was just, it's such a great thing. You just forget that. I totally forgot about, didn't even think about race watching that movie, because it's, an adult white cop with, young black kid. So it's like, like things in that movie could, definitely be like, oh, I don't know about that. But when you're watching it, it's just human beings. It's just, they just treat each other as, like just regular humans. That's why I love that movie. And it was just, I don't know, I had so much love for Burt Reynolds, and his connection to the wrestling industry was not only being a big fan, but he was the guest ring announcer for WrestleMania 10 and the main event when Bret beat Yokozuna. And I loved watching. WrestleMania 10 was one of my favorite shows to watch as a kid, but I always loved watching Burt Reynolds. He seemed to have such a genuine excitement and energy to be there, and when Bret won, he seemed legitimately excited and happy for him. And like, he's just the way he announced getting excited. Like, he just seemed excited when he was announcing it, and when Bret gets in there, he kind of like, he hugs him, and then he grabs his head and like, you did it, and like pulls him in again. It's just like, man, I was a huge fan of Burt Reynolds, loved Burt Reynolds, and it really, really makes me sad that I'll never have a chance to shake his hand and just tell him for a few seconds how much I thought of him. Boogie Nights, one of my favorite movies. His performance is just incredible. I mean, it was just, I can't believe he deserved the Oscar for that. It's tough because, Robin Williams won for Good Will Hunting, I believe. So it's like, damn it. Because, Burt Reynolds deserved it, but you can't really say, like, Robin Williams didn't. So, that's a tough one. But, Burt Reynolds didn't get any shortage of admiration and love and respect for that role in that movie. And it's just, that energy of, like, it's kind of crazy. Obviously the movie's about pornography, so it's like a really, excuse me, can be negative, bad subject. But he just brought that, like, calmness and safeness to it. Like, like, as long as he was involved, things were going to be done. Like, not the lines were going to be crossed. Things going to be done. It's a really tough. It really brings up a lot of great discussions and talking points. Boogie Nights, as a movie, but as entertainment, incredible performance from Burt Reynolds, and it's just he has an absolute, lifetime of accomplishments in his movies. Great movie after great movie. Legendary stuff like pop culture legendary stuff that will be talked about for no matter how far ahead we go in the future. Like Smokey and the Bandit, like that impact on pop culture in the 70s will be talked about forever. His Deliverance, his performance in there, that impact on the impact that movie had will be talked about forever. So I mean, it's just, and his person, the way he was, and the just being Burt Reynolds in the '70s gave us one of the greatest Saturday Night Live skits of all time, the Celebrity Jeopardy with Norm Macdonald as '70s Burt Reynolds. It's like that is one of the funniest, like Celebrity Jeopardy is one of the funniest SNL skits of all time, but that specific one is one of the absolute best. Like there are so much comedy gold in that. Like, why don't you give me 8-tip for 200? It's not 8-tip. That's a never mind. Or when he's like, my name's French. Yeah, who gives a damn? Oh man, like I could probably recite that whole thing, but it's just but I think I just had so much love for Burt Reynolds. I was such a big fan, and I'm just so sad that we lost him. And he'll never be forgotten. He will always be. His career will always have respect and admiration. And it's just I send my strongest prayers of love, strength, good energy, everything you can to his family, friends, and fans. And we love you, and we'll definitely miss you, Mr. Reynolds. Godspeed, brother. But so that pretty much brings me to the end here. I'm not gonna really talk about anything. I'm not gonna talk about any current wrestling or anything because I am just don't really have much positive to say about it. But but I wanted to keep things specifically about the Anvil and then just wanted to talk about Aretha Franklin and Burt Reynolds a little bit. So I'm gonna cut it off here for now, and lots of time for more discussion for coming up on what's up in the world today. But really, I've never been more disillusioned with the WWE product, and it's a shame because they have a roster of the absolute best talent right now. But it's just like, but not getting into it. I'm gonna cut it there. So it's sad to lose Jim the Anvil Neidhart, but it was great to be able to talk about his career and just talk about, just remember why you were such a big fan, why you had so much love for him. And it's like it's a shame that it's a shame these videos and we don't do these things while people are alive. But it's like it's just it's one of those I've said it was one of my favorite lines that I wrote in my rap songs. It was if you want to be great, if you want to truly be great, the receipt will say R.I.P. And then what I just meant that no, you don't ever truly get the respect that you deserve until you're dead, because you can't be. Because when you're dead, you can't have an ego about it. You can't be like, that's right, everyone look at me. It's like, when you're dead, people can give you as many compliments as they want, and they're just they're gonna be. It's just that I know that's the psychological reason of why people don't really give people don't give others the respect and that the respect, or say the things that they did in life that they may have done after they passed away. But I believe it's a subconscious kind of psychological thing, to where just an ego thing. You don't want to give a person a compliment and have them be like, yeah, that's right, I am the greatest, like, and you're not. So it's like, I believe that's the psychology behind it. But I'm going to cut things off for today. That was it. So, like I say again, just as strongest love and prayers out to the family, friends, and fans of the Anvil. We'll definitely miss you, but we will not forget you, brother. So, thank you everyone for tuning in today. We'll see you. Thanks. Thanks everyone for tuning in today, and we'll see you soon down the road. Much love and God bless. Peace.